بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Respected elders, dear brothers and sisters, my young friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Inshallah, in a few days or a week or so, this attendance that we're seeing in the past couple of months will go down. And that attendance will be going down, of course, because many of my young friends will be going back to school. And as we go back to school, of course, the children are going back to school, but the parents are also very much a part of it. There are some very important issues that our children, my young friends, must be aware of, and parents and adults in general should also be aware of when our children go to school. So inshallah, over the next couple of weeks, today and next Friday, we will be touching upon some of those issues. One of the most important things to remember, and I'm sure that the children here can attest to that, is that school is not just about learning. And that's the first thing we really need to clear up. Right? So a lot of times in the parents' minds, when we're sending children to school, we're just thinking, okay, they're going to go to grade school, they're going to finish their studies, this is what I want them to be when they grow up, and I want them to get straight A's, and if they don't get A's, we're going to have a major problem, and so on and so forth. Right? So all the focus is on the education, the studies. You want to make sure that your child is getting tutoring if they need it. You want to make sure they have the best school supplies, and so on. Right? So all the focus is on the academics for the most part. On the other hand, from the child's perspective, right, when you're going to school, it's not just about the education. And for a lot of kids, perhaps the education is not even a priority. Right? I know the parents don't want to hear that, but that's what happens a lot of times. Right? And school is really a social experience. Right? Because that's where you meet people, that's where you get to do things that maybe your parents don't want you to do, or you get to talk about them at least. That's where you are at least away from your parents for a bit and their control. And this is when the children are young, of course. As they grow older, they become more and more distant. And that's that's a place where you learn a lot of the things you're not going to learn from your parents. That's where you hear people talk about a lot of things that you're not allowed to talk about, or your parents don't want to hear you talking about. And that's when you can really explore. And you can hang around different types of people and really build your personality from a social perspective. Right? So the point is that from the child's perspective, school, a major part of school is about socialization. Now, of course, those friends could also continue to be friends through the summer break. Right? So especially those children who live very close to each other with their classmates, or they have other friends. So friendship and socialization is not something which is exclusive or specific to school, but my point is that it is a major part of school. Now, every person wants to be included, right? Nobody likes to be left out, right? Even adults, right? If you're at a work meeting or some gathering, or you go to someone's house, and everyone starts talking to each other, and you're the only one who's sitting in the corner, that's not a good feeling that you're going to have, right? Maybe it's not so prevalent amongst men, but definitely happens amongst sisters, amongst women, okay? Even perhaps amongst brothers as well, okay? So nobody likes to be left out. And in fact, the Prophet ﷺ has even instructed us to the point where we are not to whisper to one another if there's a third person present, because we're not supposed to leave people out and make them feel excluded. Right? So if there's three people in a room or standing together, it is inappropriate, per the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, for two people to be whispering to one another, because the third person is left out, they don't know what they're talking about. And it's not just about whispering, right? Even if you're speaking another language, which the third person doesn't understand, then it also has the same impact. So that's just something to keep in mind. So the point is that everyone wants to be included. Nobody likes to be excluded. Nobody wants to be made fun of. Right? And of course, we know that bullying is a big issue, right? Especially nowadays. It's happened before too, but with more sort of serious implications, more so today. So therefore, there is great pressure upon children to conform. There is great pressure upon children to conform and to fit in to what everyone else is doing. So this is very important to understand. because this is what leads to a lot of the issues and the challenges that children will face in schools and generally in society as they're growing up. Adults also face pressure, right? You have pressure from your family, you have pressure from your social circle, you have indirect pressure even from the people you surround yourself with online, right? And the types of things that they're doing and the types of activities and pictures they're posting about, and you start comparing, right? That's how we are naturally. We start comparing. And if you are not doing the same things that everyone else seems to be doing, even though they may not all be doing that, right? But it just seems that way because your news feed looks like that, then all of a sudden you might actually start questioning yourself and say, well, you know, if everyone else is doing that and they're having such a great time, and if they're able to do that, then why am I not doing that, right? So this is also something to keep in mind. For children, it can be incredibly difficult, right? More so than adults, even though it's difficult for adults as well, to say no. To say no to pressure, right? So when your friends, right, the people you're around, your classmates are doing something, and everyone is into something, how do you say no to that? That takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of strength, again, even for adults. But you can imagine that if an adult faces that challenge in their life, right, whether it's their work life or social, or, family life, then imagine how much pressure that is for a child, right, especially a young child. So it's very difficult to say no. But that's one of the things that we should be looking for when we're actually looking to make friends. That how respectful are my friends of my choices? Like I know it's easy for me to say this while standing up here, and practically it's a lot more challenging. But that's one of the questions you always have to ask yourself, that the friends that I have, are they respectful of my choices or not? When I tell them that I don't want to do something, when I say no to something, are they willing to accept that or not? And a true friend would be a person who actually accepts your choice and respects your choice and actually supports you in your choice. That is someone who would be a true friend, as opposed to someone who does not want to accept or respect your choice and instead tries to pressure you to do things that you don't want to do. Now the problem is, and the reason why this is incredibly important when we talk about friends and company, is because the people that we surround ourselves with are the ones who are going to have the greatest impact upon us. And especially when children are growing up, and especially through your teen years when you're going through so many changes and there's so many opportunities to explore new things, right, and new ideas, right? The people who are around you, who you are surrounding yourself with, will have a great impact on the way you behave and on the way you think. And if that impact is happening during these formative years or during this time when your attitudes, your beliefs, your choices are not really solidified in the right way, then there's a great impact that they could actually be impacted in the wrong way for the long term. And again, that underlines the seriousness of this. So, for example, if you are, and I've seen this in children, like sometimes the impact is very stark, right? Like you could see it just after a month, just after a few weeks, right? If you're immersed with the right people, that impact becomes visible. And on the other hand, if you're immersed with the wrong crowd, right? So, for example, if there's a group of people, it doesn't have to be children, it could be adults, who are talking about things which are negative, talking about things which are not appropriate, they're using inappropriate language, that clearly rubs off, right? Because it's only for so long that you're going to be able to say no and keep yourself clean and try to stay away. And then, mashallah, there might be some cases where some people might be able to pull through, but most chances are that eventually, maybe not the first day, not the second day, not the third day, but after a week perhaps, eventually at some point, your sense of what is right and what is wrong will start to either diminish or will be overcome by your surroundings and the environment that you're in. Adults, definitely, you can relate to the pressure that you feel at work, right? If people are going for a drink, right, are you able to exclude yourself from that, right? Are you able to? Are you afraid of the consequences? Right? Or do you go along, right, and say, well, I'll just have some water or lemonade instead? Right? And then there's other cases where people are not even able to do that because there's so much pressure to conform, even though no one's actually forcing them to drink alcohol. But they just feel so awkward or so embarrassed to say no that they'll even get a drink. And I've heard about this, I hear from people. It's like they'll get a drink and they'll actually just pretend that they're drinking, just to bring it up to their lips and put it down, right? SubhanAllah, right? So that's not to look down upon anyone, but it's just to say that the influence of our surroundings, our peers, the people around us, can have a greater impact than we sometimes imagine, right? So the pressure is incredibly great. And we talk about our lifestyles as well, right? The way that we choose to live. How much of it is really because we think, or we believe it's the right way to live, or to dress, or cars you drive, all the choices that you make. And how much of it is actually pressure, right? Or things that are being dictated to you by society or by your social circle. And you feel that you have to do those things in order to keep up, in order to keep your standing. Prophet ﷺ has told us that al-mar'u ala dini khalili, that a person is upon the deen, right, the faith, the religion, the way of life of his close friend. فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِفُ. So beware of who you befriend. And this is timeless wisdom, right? That be aware, watch, pay attention to the people that you're hanging out with, for the people who you are choosing to spend time with, who you are making your friends, and especially close friends. Especially close friends. Like I know, right? You have to work with people. You have classmates. You have colleagues. Obviously, you have you're on a team. You're working together. You're doing projects together. You're sharing notes. You're doing all of those things, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all, right? But you have to know your boundaries. You have to know your boundaries. You've got to be able to separate work and study from your personal life, from your family life. And when those lines get blurred, and at the same time you're not able to pick and choose your friends, so you let everyone come that close, that's when it becomes really problematic. That's when it becomes really problematic. So, you should be able to say that, okay, these are my classmates, these are people I am on good terms with, I'm friendly with, right? Doesn't mean that you should be mean with them or you should be rude to them. But you know what your boundaries are. So it's during work, it's during school, and after that, or outside of work, related business, or outside of studies, right, homework or projects. Other than that, you don't really socialize with them. You don't have to socialize with them. You can have your own friends, right? And I'm not just saying that, right? I am still studying right now too, right? I am in school. And I know, obviously, we work with all types of people who are in the class, and we do projects. I just finished 2 assignments this morning, alhamdulillah, and one of them was a group project. So sure, we're working with our classmates, but do I then, text them afterwards and ask them where they're going tonight, or like what are they doing over the weekend, or if they want to come along on a trip with me or something? No, right? Because I know that is schoolwork, right? And that's what it's for. And then I have my own personal life. So the Prophet ﷺ told us to beware of who we befriend, right? So this indicates to us that a person will be upon the same methodology as their friend, right? The same path, the same nature, the same manners, the same behavior. So be very careful. Be very, very careful. And you're probably thinking, every once in a while I talk about this. And the reason I do that is because I see the impact. I see the impact on young people, especially. Right? When parents, families come to me, or even young people themselves come to me with issues, one of the first things that I want to know is who are they hanging out with? Because a lot of times that change, right? The point where the downward spiral starts, it usually has to do with the people that they're hanging out with, and the type of friends that they're keeping. Now, this can be positive too, right? It doesn't, like peer pressure doesn't have to be negative. It can be positive too. If everyone else is studying, everyone else is going for salah, everyone else is, doing something positive, something good, and then you feel compelled to do that, well, alhamdulillah, that's a good thing, right? Like you hear about some of these work teams you guys are at, right? There's a brother who doesn't really pray, right? But then everyone else is like going for salah for Jummah, and then, like, you know, it's awkward to say no. And then, mashallah, you come along as well. Alhamdulillah, you know, welcome. So it's great to have you here. But, you know, so peer pressure can be positive as well. And that is what we actually want for ourselves. Because we want people around us who are actually going to lift us up. We want people who are going to lift us up. We don't want people around us who are going to drag us down. And this also goes for marriage, by the way. It's not the time to talk about detail about marriage. Right? A lot of weddings are already taking place. Alhamdulillah, mashallah, and Allah congratulate all the new couples. But one of the things that you want to look for in your partner for the future is someone who will actually lift you up. Someone who will actually help you get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ideally, that's what you want, right? It's not always possible, I understand. May not always be the case. Sometimes you may think that it's the case, but it turns out not to be the case. So all of those things can happen. But what I'm saying, though, is that when you're setting your ideal, that is something that you want to be aiming for. That I want something who will actually help me improve. And sometimes people try to do the other way, you know, the opposite. So someone asked me recently, you know, it was a sister that was asking me, you know, there's a brother, and, you know, he has all these issues with the salah in terms of, you know, drinking and all of these issues. You know, should I get married to him so that perhaps I can help him improve, right? And my advice really was, you know, when you choose a partner, don't base it on what they want to be in the future. Base it on what they are now. Okay, because that's what you're getting into. Okay, that's what you're bringing into your life. And there's no guarantees about the future. Either way, granted, right? But if someone really aspires to be good in the future, after they get married to you, that's great, mashallah. That's good that they want to do that. But that's not something that I believe you should be putting yourself into simply because someone else wants to improve. If they're not able to improve, you know, without you, they're not even able to get to that bare minimum, then what guarantees do you have that you're actually going to be able to pull them up and keep them up? And do you actually want to keep up that responsibility? Anyway, that's a separate discussion. So point was is that peer pressure and the people around us can have a positive impact on us as well, right? And that's ideally who we to have around us. You see, the Prophet ﷺ has told us that إِنَّمَا مَثَلُ الْجَلِيسِ الصَّالِحِ وَالْجَلِيسِ السُّوءِ. He gave us two examples, right? He gave us the example of a good friend and a bad friend. كَحَامِلِ الْمِسْكِ وَنَافِقِ الْكِيلِ. It is like the example of a carrier of musk and a blacksmith. Not that there's anything wrong with being a blacksmith, right? But the carrier of musk will give you some, or you will buy some, or you will notice a good smell. But as for the blacksmith, he will burn your clothes, or you will notice a bad smell. Okay? So again, it's nothing to do with the profession, but it's just an example that if you have good friends, either you will gain something from them, they will gain something from you, or at the very least, you're going to stay out of trouble. Right? Your personality, your actions are not going to stink. Right? On the other hand, if you have people that you're dealing with who you choose as your friends, who you allow to be your friends, who are into burning stuff, right? And their attitude, their personality is stinking, then that is going to rub off on you as well. And either way, you're going to end up getting burned. And this applies to our online friends as well, because they do have an impact on us as well. So my brothers and sisters, my young friends, today, as we get ready, the next week or so for the new school year, my recommendation, my suggestion is that we do an audit of our friends, right? So just think about, you don't have to do it now, do it tonight when you're laying in bed. You think about, who are the people who are in your life, who you're most closest to, your friends, your social circle. And are they helping you become a better person? Are they respectful of your beliefs? They don't have to be Muslim, right? But are they respectful of your beliefs and your values? When you get together, what are the things that you do and what do you talk about? Is it positive? Or are they things that you don't want people to hear? You don't want others to know. You don't want your spouse to know. You don't want your parents to know. Right? Are you ashamed of telling people the things that you talk about and the things that you do? And think about, how can you encourage your friends to move towards things which are positive and the things which are clean? In the end, the most important thing is, are you going to be happy that you had these friends in this life? Or are you going to regret it and be upset at them for all the trouble that they got you into while you were around them? Right? And this real feeling will come on the day of resurrection. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. Allah Azza wa Jal grant us and our friends and our children good friends and good company. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from all types of friends which are evil and which are a means of trouble for us in this world and in the hereafter. Ameen wa